This is precious angel that got laid down like an animal. You know, to show she didn't deserve to die.
Welcome to Outlook. I'm Beth Vorhees. Given the violent history between Nelisha Gravely and Desmond Clark, it seems it could have been easy to predict that he would kill her someday. Charleston police say he finally did last Saturday afternoon. She was shot several times, first in his vehicle, then at this Taco Bell restaurant. In this surveillance video, police say that's Desmond Clark sliding over a counter in pursuit of Nelisha Gravely. They say he found her in a utility closet, shot her 5 to 6 times, then calmly left the restaurant. Clark was arrested early Sunday morning, just after midnight.
Do you have anything you want to say to her family?
I love my son.
What does it mean for him now?
We're going to catch who did it.
It wasn't you?
Nope. I know you want to hold these Jordans because them New Balances ain't doing it.
In the past 4 years, Clark has been arrested several times. Once he allegedly grazed her with a bullet. He's also been arrested on charges of stabbing, beating, and kidnapping Gravely. But he's only served about 3 months in jail. Once, charges were dropped because a police officer failed to attend a hearing. In 2005, prosecutors never brought to a grand jury charges that he kidnapped Gravely and hit her in the head with a handgun. This past March, he was sentenced to just 2 years probation on drug, weapons, and battery charges. He wasn't sentenced to any jail time. He entered a plea bargain to these charges in January, just a month after Clark himself was a shooting victim in Charleston. Still, why was a man with such a long arrest record allowed to remain on the streets? Earlier this week, reporter Scott Finn gauged sentiment in the community where the shooting took place. He spoke to Pastor Matthew Watts, who heads a community development program in the area. Desmond Clark was once enrolled in that program.
I can only speak from my personal dealings with him. Okay, with me, he was always respectful. So he was in our GED program, he was respectful to me. I would see him on the street, and I would talk to him, respectful. The last time I spoke with him was at Shawnee Park, and he had played a basketball game. And I said to him, God has given you another chance, because after him recovering from being shot back in December, and what are you going to do with that chance?
What did he say? Well,
he told me he was going to take advantage of it.
See, we've got to stop having leniency for people who do domestic battery and domestic violence. They need to be treated like any other hardened criminal because they have the capacity to kill. And not just maim, but to kill and destroy whole families.
Saturday's pursuit of Desmond Clark led SWAT team officers to this street, where some friends of Clark's are upset with Pastor Watts.
I know, but why are y'all doing an interview here?
We've been walking around the whole community. If you want to talk to us, we'd be more willing to interview you all if you'd like to.
No, I'd rather not. And Reverend Watts, I think you should have blessed everyone, not just one family this weekend.
Well, if you would call me, we'd talk about it, and I'll be more than glad to explain to you what my position is.
I'd rather not talk about it.
Well, you call.
I'm just saying you should have blessed everyone's family. It's more than one family hurt in this situation.
I understand that.
It's not just one family.
I understand that.
Everybody's hurt.
I understand that. You talk to Miss Clark, and I think that she was. That's what I deal with in this community. It rips at the community, and so long after this moves off of the front page of the newspaper, and long after it's no longer on PBS and the network news, the community often is still hemorrhaging over what has happened.
Joining us now is Pastor Matthew Watts. He heads a program for at-risk youth and juvenile offenders called Hope Community Development. He's joining us for a larger discussion of the criminal justice system, from domestic violence laws to how and why deals are made that keep people like Desmond Clark on the street. We're also joined by George Castelle. He's the Chief Public Defender in Kanawha County. Charleston Police Chief Brent Webster, and Delegate Carrie Webster, the chairwoman of the House Judiciary Committee. Delegate Webster has been working to strengthen domestic violence laws. And for purposes of disclosure, we would like to say that Delegate Webster and Chief Webster are brother and sister. Welcome to you all. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pastor Watts, explain what we just saw. What was that woman talking to you about?
Well, it's a frustrated, concerned citizen. She felt that I should have shown more attention to the family of the alleged perpetrator of this recent shooting on the West Side during my Sunday morning radio program. when I did focus a considerable amount of attention to the family of the deceased young lady, which I believe to be appropriate for me to do. We always dedicate programs and we show attention to families of the bereaved. But it shows concern and it shows frustration. She is a very close friend and dear friend of the mother of the alleged perpetrator, and more like an aunt to him. And she's concerned and she's frustrated. And because I don't hide from the people, nor do I hide from their criticism, I'm accountable to the people, their frustration will be vented against someone like myself. Because they often cannot vent their frustration to the people that they're really upset with.
Chief Webster, there has been a lot of discussion about the multiple arrests of Desmond Clark. Obviously, your officers knew this guy, right?
Yes.
Were they frustrated that he was still on the street?
Yes, they were very frustrated. He's not the only one. When you see repeat offenders, you do get frustrated, and you wish maybe you could do more. But we also understand the limitations of the system as well. And there's a lot of if-onlys. You know, if only we had more evidence, if only we showed up to court and testified, those kind of things. And so, but we were very, very aware of him, and we knew of him.
Mr. Castelle, in very general terms, now you've never represented Desmond Clark.
Not personally,
Not
no.
personally. But in general terms, from a defender who deals with young men like this all the time,
yes.
Why was he not in jail?
What I usually see is just the opposite. I see not vast numbers of people who aren't in jail, who the general public and the general consensus should be in jail. I see just the opposite. I see large numbers of people in jail, I think unnecessarily and inappropriately. So my experience is primarily the opposite. And I think if you look historically, and of course any one tragedy or any one major crime draws a lot of attention, but it sometimes, in fact it often, gives a distorted impression, because if you look at the historical record just in West Virginia, you see over the last 15 years or so, you see a population that is stable, you see a crime rate that is not increasing but is instead declining, including a violent crime rate declining, and yet you see a jail and prison population that honestly has tripled. Tripled when every factor that you would think would have a bearing on the size of the prison population has decreased.
Delegate Webster, your background is as a public defender. You represent this area of Charleston in the legislature, and you're chair of the Judiciary Committee. What stands out to you about this case, maybe not this case specifically, but this scenario, which plays out time and time again in West Virginia? Just a couple of months ago, a woman bus driver shot cleaning her bus by her estranged husband. We see this scenario played out. So from your perspective, what should be done?
Well, one thing that I think is evident just from the discussion at this table is a lack of information. We're focusing on the conviction and sentencing afterwards, but a part that we're working on in the legislature is a uniform bond schedule that will at least give guidance, because you're supposed, when you look at a person who's a candidate for bond, in almost every crime except a capital one, you're going to look at likelihood to commit a crime, their past record, their willingness to show up in court, because that's the point of bail. And one thing, and this is something the public didn't know, did we have low bonds? You know, those kinds of issues.
He could met the bonds.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think, you know, the records show that he was in all total, you know, between 40, 60, 70 days on different charges. But violent crimes usually mean higher bonds. And the criteria a magistrate will look at will be your prior arrest record, your likelihood of committing another one, and violence. Are you likely to commit it again?
And in West Virginia, the bonds are too low.
The bonds are arbitrary. There's no schedule.
Well, I think the problem is just the opposite, that with individual exceptions that we can all criticize, that bonds are much higher than they have ever been in the past. This is pretrial incarceration, when, as Reverend Watts points out, there's a presumption of innocence, that when a bond is so high that a person can't post it, that's in effect a presumption of guilt, and it's serving punishment before conviction. So we have jails filled with people who shouldn't be there, because bonds are in my experience, often set much too high.